This is going to be a video about the first GOP presidential debate that was on yesterday in Ohio. I watched it and I certainly had a number of reactions. It's been a day, so I can't remember all of the details, but I wanted to speak briefly about each of the candidates. I'm actually not able to vote in the United States, but by the next election, 2020, I will be a citizen and I will definitely be voting. So I've always been interested in politics, and American politics in particular is fascinating and much more interesting than Australian politics, which can be quite boring. So anyway, to the candidates, the first one, and I'm going to speak about them in order of their rankings that they had prior to this debate and in regards to the polls. So the first one, Donald Trump. Well, as to be expected, he was very extreme in the debate. Honestly, I don't think he did very well. He came across as very angry, very arrogant, and very much out of control. He did not answer questions directly. He seemed to have an inability to present evidence and focus on the content of what he was being asked, and he very much just relied on his personality. He was particularly awful in the way he responded to the question about sexism, and I think overall his performance was pretty abysmal. Jeb Bush, to me, he was pretty neutral. He didn't make any major mistakes. He wasn't terrible, he wasn't great, he was just kind of in the middle. And I didn't really have any particularly negative or positive reaction to him. Scott Walker is not someone that I've ever paid a lot of attention to in the political field. I know he's quite popular in conservative circles. The one thing that really did stick out for me was how he answered the question in related to abortion and whether he would ever consider an exception when the mother is basically dying, and he basically said no. So if your relative or your female relative or your wife, sister, whatever, was about to die, he would say that the baby should live and the mother should die. Very bizarre, very extreme. Mike Huckabee, another extremist, can speak very well like a preacher, but wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him. He's another abortion extremist, basically thinks fetal cells have more rights than a lot of human beings while people are actually born. He's one of these people that's pro-life before birth and not very pro-life once people are actually alive on this earth. Very much against any type of equality for LGBT people. He's very extreme, and he was on good display last night. Ben Carson, the retired neurosurgeon, I think he spoke well in general. He has a nice tone to his voice. He ended well with a very kind of personal story about some of the surgery he's done and things like that. But he's another one that's very extreme in regards to LGBT issues, very extreme in relation to religion, and absolutely could never support him. Ted Cruz, another extremist. I think he spoke reasonably well. He seemed to get across some good answers. He didn't come across as angry. He seems to be very smooth, very slick, but again, in relation to the issues, didn't say anything, which I thought was good. Marco Rubio, I think he spoke well, but to me he came across as very scripted, as though he had memorized, responses to a whole range of topics, and when he had the opportunity, he spat it out like an actor. So I don't think he was able to, I don't think he was speaking very spontaneously, and I would, it'd be interesting to see how he would go when he really didn't have much idea about what the type of questions that he was going to be asked. The best thing that he said was in relation to Hillary Clinton, when he said, if the presidential race was about selecting the person with the best resume, it would be Hillary Clinton. Great answer, and it's true. That's how it should be. In relation to the next candidate, Rand Paul, he came across as quite angry and defensive, didn't really get the opportunity to express his views in a way which you could receive and understand. He got into a very testy conversation with the next candidate, Chris Christie, and I think Rand Paul lost that fight, and Chris Christie did pretty well. Not a fan of Chris Christie. He's another one that seems angry, a bit like a pit bull, and not someone I would trust either. Last candidate, John Kasich, Ohio governor. Didn't really know much about him before the debate. I think actually he spoke well. He answered some of the questions quite well in relation to how he has expanded Medicaid in his state and why, and also I think his answer in relation to whether we have a gay daughter, you know, how he would react to that, and his answers about marriage equality, which were, you know, reasonable when you compare him with the vast majority of Republican candidates who are very extreme on this issue. So if I was forced to vote for someone in this field, if I had to pick three, okay, 1, Kasich, 2, Jeb Bush, 3, Marco Rubio, but in reality, I would never vote for any of them. Thank you.